The city lay in ruins, broken glass glittering in the weak morning light and metal skeletons of buildings jutting toward the gray sky. Most streets were empty, silent except for the distant cries of scavengers searching for food or water. In the heart of this abandoned city, a 12-year-old boy named Ethan moved carefully, his thin feet crunching on broken concrete. He had learned early that in a world like this, speed and caution often meant the difference between life and death. He clutched tightly to his only possession, a ragged blanket so thin that it barely kept him warm, yet he carried it everywhere as though it were a treasure chest. Ethan's stomach rumbled, a constant reminder of his life of scarcity. The small packs of scavenged food he found each day never lasted long. He wandered through the ruined streets, checking the alleyways and broken buildings, hoping for a scrap of bread or a bottle of water. He kept moving, not out of fear of others, but fear of being found unprepared, weak or alone. That evening, as the sun sank behind the skeletal remains of skyscrapers, Ethan sought shelter in what remained of an abandoned apartment building. The walls were scorched from fires long extinguished, and the air smelled of smoke and dust. He stepped over fallen furniture, the floor cracking under his weight. Somewhere in the darkness, a soft sound reached him, a whisper, faint and strange. It did not sound like the wind. Ethan froze. His pulse quickened. He had seen many strange things in the city: wild dogs scavenging in packs, drones from old military forces left active. But this sound was different. Curious, he followed it cautiously. Around a corner, hidden behind the broken remnants of a wall, he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. It was an alien. Its body was fragile and weak, lying on the floor with blue skin that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Bioluminescent patterns traced across its arms and chest, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Its breathing was shallow, ragged, and harsh. A low groan escaped its lips, almost human in sound. Ethan's first instinct was to run. He had never seen a creature like this. Its eyes were large and luminous, filled with pain, and yet something in those eyes drew him closer. The boy hesitated. His blanket, worn and frayed, lay over his shoulder. He thought of how little he had, how much the cold had been biting him for days, how hungry he still was. But as he looked at the alien lying weak and trembling, he felt something he had rarely felt: empathy. Fear did not vanish completely, but it softened under the weight of compassion. Slowly, Ethan stepped forward and knelt beside the creature. The alien looked at him with eyes that reflected both fear and hope. Its voice, or whatever sound it made, was weak, almost a whisper. Ethan could not understand it, yet he sensed it was a plea for help. Without thinking twice, he pulled the thin blanket from his shoulder and wrapped it gently around the alien's body. The creature shivered, and the blanket felt too small to cover it fully, but Ethan made sure it was as comfortable as possible. Then he reached into the small bag he carried and pulled out the last piece of stale bread he had found. He pressed it into the alien's trembling hands. The alien's fingers were delicate, almost fragile, and it struggled to take the bread. Ethan smiled softly. "Eat, you need it," he said, though he did not expect the alien to understand words. The warmth of his voice seemed to reach the alien in some way. It coughed weakly but managed to nibble the bread. Hours passed. Ethan stayed close, murmuring small comforts he could think of. He shared what little water he had and held the alien's hand when it trembled. The boy's body grew cold, the chill of the abandoned building biting into his bones, but he did not move away. He knew the alien might not survive the night without help. His mind thought of what could happen if he left, but he could not bear the thought of abandoning the creature. As the night grew deeper, a faint glow began emanating from the alien's body. It was weak at first, almost imperceptible, but then the bioluminescent patterns grew brighter, pulsing in rhythm with the alien's shallow breaths. Ethan watched in awe. It was not fire, not electricity, but something alive, warm, and strange. He did not fully understand it, but he felt that the alien was responding to his care. Finally, the alien lifted its hand toward him. A soft pressure, almost like a heartbeat, pressed against Ethan's palm. Though the boy did not understand the alien's language, the gesture conveyed a simple message: gratitude. There was something more, too, an unspoken promise, a bond that transcended words. Ethan nodded silently, tears welling in his eyes. "I'll be okay," he whispered. "Don't worry about me." He knew the alien was not afraid anymore, and that small comfort filled him with pride. After a long while, Ethan finally stood. He knew he could not stay all night. The city was dangerous, and he needed some rest. He carefully arranged the blanket around the alien, making sure it would not be exposed to the cold. "Sleep," he murmured. "You'll be safe." With that, he backed away, glancing once more before disappearing into the darkness. The night was silent again, yet it felt different. There was a lingering warmth in the air, a subtle glow where the alien lay. Somewhere deep in the galaxy, far from Earth, the aliens' people sensed the event. They were warriors, explorers, and protectors, and they recognized acts of bravery and kindness even across light years. Their systems detected the aliens' touch, a signal of life sustained against all odds, and they began to prepare. Ethan returned to his hiding spot, huddled under the remainder of his thin blanket. The cold was still harsh and his stomach ached with hunger, but he felt a warmth in his chest he had not known before. He had done something important. For the first time in a long while, he felt that he mattered. The hours passed slowly and the city seemed empty as always, but Ethan did not notice the strange pulses of light far above the atmosphere, far beyond the reach of any human eye. The aliens' people had already begun traveling toward Earth. 200 elite warriors, armed and trained for war, moved through space at speeds unimaginable, guided by the faint trace of the aliens' life force, now amplified by the boy's selfless act. By dawn, Ethan had fallen asleep, exhausted but peaceful. He did not know what awaited him in the coming days. He could not have imagined the magnitude of what a single act of kindness could bring. Across the stars, the fleet continued its journey, carrying with it warriors who had never seen a human, but who had already decided that the boy on that ruined Earth was worth meeting. Morning light crept into the broken city, casting long shadows across the rubble. Ethan stirred, shivering in the thin blanket that was now all he had left. He rubbed his eyes and glanced toward the building where he had left the alien. For a moment he felt a pang of regret, a worry that perhaps he had not done enough. But then he saw something unusual. A faint shimmer, almost like heat rising from the ruins. He blinked, but it did not disappear. Ethan felt a strange sense of calm. Somehow he knew that the alien was still alive. Somehow he knew that the choice he had made, giving away the only blanket he owned, had not been in vain. Little did Ethan know, his act of courage and empathy had begun a chain of events that would change the world, and perhaps the galaxy, forever. The night's darkness had passed, but a new kind of light was on the horizon, one that promised that even in the smallest and most fragile humans, the greatest strength could be found, and far above Earth, the alien warriors moved silently through the void, closing in on a tiny planet that had witnessed something rare and precious. A human, small and powerless in appearance, who had shown that kindness could transcend fear, species, and the void of space itself. Ethan slept unaware of the destiny he had set in motion. Tomorrow his life would change forever. Ethan woke with a start. The morning sun had barely crept above the horizon, and a strange humming filled the air. At first he thought it was the wind through the ruined city, but the sound was different, mechanical, rhythmic, and growing louder. He rubbed his eyes, still half asleep, and glanced toward the streets. At first he saw nothing. Then in the distance shapes began to emerge. They were unlike anything he had ever seen, enormous, sleek, and metallic, gliding just above the ground. His heart pounded in his chest. What is that?" he whispered, voice trembling. The shapes moved closer, revealing themselves to be ships, hundreds of them, landing in perfect formation across the city. Each vessel was sleek, dark, and alien, with glowing lines tracing their surfaces. Dust and debris swirled around them as they settled, and the humming grew into a deep, resonant vibration that shook the cracked concrete beneath Ethan's feet. He froze, unsure whether to run or stay. Something in him told him these beings were not like the hostile scavengers or war machines he had encountered before. They were deliberate, precise, and silent in their movements. Then, one by one, the ships opened and the aliens stepped out. They were tall, muscular, and armored, their blue skin shimmering faintly beneath the sunlight. Bioluminescent patterns ran along their bodies, pulsing gently in rhythm with their breathing. Their faces were both alien and humanoid, with large eyes that seemed to see everything. Ethan's mouth went dry. He had never seen so many of their kind in one place. At first, the aliens simply scanned the area. Their movements were careful, controlled, but they were not aggressive. They moved with a precision that spoke of discipline, as if trained for battle, yet their eyes held no hatred, only focus. Ethan felt an odd mix of fear and curiosity. Suddenly, one of them paused, turning sharply toward him. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The alien lifted a hand in a gesture he did not understand, then another, until the motion became clear. It was signaling him to come forward. Hesitant, Ethan stepped out from his hiding spot. Clutching the thin blanket he had wrapped around himself, the alien approached, slow and deliberate, until it was close enough for Ethan to see the subtle glow of its skin. It knelt slightly, a gesture of respect, and extended its hand. Ethan stared, unsure what to do. Then he realized the alien was acknowledging him, honoring him in a way he had never experienced. More aliens began to gather around, forming a semicircle. They were silent, their eyes fixed on Ethan, and yet there was no hostility, only reverence. One of them, taller than the rest, stepped forward. Its armor was decorated with symbols and markings that Ethan could not understand. But their meaning was clear. This was a leader. The leader extended a hand, and a holographic projection appeared between them, showing the alien Ethan had helped the night before. The boy's eyes widened. He recognized the glowing blue patterns on its body. The aliens around him spoke in a language he could not comprehend, but somehow through gestures, tone, and the hologram, Ethan understood the story. The wounded alien he had saved was not just any being. It was a warrior of great importance, one whose life held meaning for its entire species. Ethan's act of compassion had preserved its life when no one else could. For this, he had earned a place in the hearts of the alien warriors. Ethan's mind struggled to process this. He had given away his only blanket, his last piece of food, and risked himself to help a creature he barely understood. And now, because of that, 200 elite alien warriors were bowing to him, acknowledging him as a hero. It was overwhelming. The leader knelt once more, lowering its head in a gesture that transcended language. Ethan, unsure of what to do, simply nodded. He felt a strange warmth in his chest. For the first time, he felt recognized, not as a weak, homeless boy, but as someone important, someone capable of making a difference. Then came the most unexpected moment. One of the aliens stepped forward, placing a small device in Ethan's hands. It projected a holographic map of Earth and the surrounding space, highlighting regions that were under threat from hostile species. The aliens explained, through a combination of gestures, images, and simple words they had learned from observing humans, that these enemies were approaching, and the Earth was vulnerable. Ethan stared at the map, realizing the gravity of the situation. He was just a boy, small and unarmed, and yet here he was, in the midst of beings who had the power to destroy entire planets. And they had come to him not to fight, but because they believed he had something precious: courage, empathy, and a heart capable of extraordinary choices. One of the aliens, a female warrior with elegant armor and a gentle demeanor, crouched beside him. She pointed to the hologram, then to him, and finally to the alien he had saved. Ethan understood. His actions had shown that humans, though weak in appearance, could perform acts of heroism that even the strongest aliens respected. The realization filled him with awe. He thought of the cold nights he had endured, the hunger, the fear of being alone. All of that, all the suffering, had led him to this moment. And now, because he had acted selflessly, the fate of his planet might change. Hours passed as the aliens prepared their equipment, scanning the area and setting defensive systems. Ethan followed them cautiously, absorbing everything he could. He was learning fast about their technology, their movements, and their understanding of life. He realized that despite their strength, they valued life and compassion above all, something humans often overlooked in their daily struggles. As the sun climbed higher, Ethan felt a tug in his heart. Part of him wanted to stay on Earth, to return to the ruins he knew, to the streets where he had survived. But another part of him understood something vital. He had been chosen for a reason. The aliens were not just rescuing Earth. They were inviting him to be part of something greater, something beyond the boundaries of his ruined city. Then the leader approached once more, projecting a single word in glowing letters: choice. Ethan understood. He could remain on Earth, safe among the few humans who had survived, or he could step forward with them, leaving everything familiar behind to embrace a destiny no human had ever known. Ethan's mind raced. He thought of his blanket, the cold nights, the hunger, and the fear. Then he thought of the alien he had saved, lying weak but alive, its life intertwined with his own act of kindness. He felt a sudden surge of courage, the kind he had never known he possessed. Slowly, he nodded. "I'll go," he said, his voice steady. The aliens responded with a chorus of gestures, a quiet but powerful acknowledgement of his decision. They formed a protective circle around him, guiding him toward one of the ships. Ethan clutched his thin blanket, not as a shield against the cold, but as a reminder of the moment that had changed everything. The interior of the ship was unlike anything he had imagined. It was vast, with soft glowing walls and technology that seemed alive. Holographic displays floated in the air, and the air itself felt warmer, more welcoming than the harsh streets outside. The aliens moved with quiet purpose, ensuring Ethan was comfortable and safe. As the ship lifted off, Ethan looked out the window. The ruined city grew smaller beneath him, the streets empty and silent, yet filled with memories of his survival. He thought of the nights he had shivered under his thin blanket, the scraps of food he had scavenged, and the fear that had defined his life. And now that life felt like a stepping stone to something greater. The fleet followed, all 200 ships moving in formation, leaving Earth behind. Ethan watched as the planet faded into the distance, a fragile blue and green marble suspended in the vastness of space. He felt a strange mixture of loss and excitement, fear and hope. He had left everything he knew, but in return he had been given a chance to witness, to learn, and to belong to something far larger than himself. Days passed aboard the alien ships. Ethan learned quickly, observing their customs, their language, and their technology. They showed him how they communicated, how they fought, and most importantly, how they valued life. He realized that humans, despite their small size and limited strength, shared something vital with these warriors: the capacity for courage, compassion, and choice. Ethan often thought of the alien he had saved. He wondered if it would recover fully, if it would remember him, and if their lives would intersect again. The aliens assured him that the being was strong, recovering faster than expected, and that it often spoke of the boy who had given its life a chance. Ethan felt a surge of pride. One evening, as the fleet drifted through the quiet darkness of space, Ethan sat by a window, the stars stretching endlessly around him. He realized that his life had changed forever, not because he had sought adventure or power, but because he had acted with kindness. That single act, giving his only blanket to a dying alien, had drawn the attention of an entire civilization, proving that humanity, though small and fragile, could inspire awe across the stars. And in that moment, Ethan understood a truth he had never known. Courage and compassion were stronger than fear, brighter than the coldest night, and capable of creating destinies far beyond one boy, one city, or even one planet. The boy who had once huddled under a thin, worn blanket was no longer just a survivor of a ruined city. He was a symbol, a testament that even the smallest human could change the fate of worlds.